is Tom LoBianco. He is the author of a new book, Piety and Power, Mike Pence and the Taking of the White House. Tom, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tom. Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. First of all, before we get into some of my questions specifically about how your book characterizes Mike Pence and what you learned when you did all this research on his life, I'm curious your thoughts and also your knowledge. You know what you've as an observer of Pence, but also as I'm assuming somebody who reads the news like all the rest of us do. Pence, back on September 2nd, if my memory serves me correctly, gave a press conference in Poland, and this was subsequently, this was substantially after the Trump's conversation with Zelensky and Giuliani's multiple contacts with Zelensky's people and the invocation of Bill Barr and all this other stuff. Pence gave this press conference, and he mentioned that specifically that he was talking with Zelensky's people about, quote, corruption in Ukraine, end quote, and which we now know is a code word for find some dirt on Joe Biden's son, Hunter. I'm curious your take on all this and how up to his eyeballs you think Pence is in this whole mess.
Sure, yeah, I remember that, and I read that transcript and from the White House printout of that press conference, and I will say this: it looks like he's more exposed than he ever was during the entire Trump-Russia Mueller probe. He met with Zelensky. Now, two things to point out here. He gets two questions about this, right? The first question is, did he bring up Joe Biden at all? And he says no. So definitive, no. Second question, what did you talk about? Well, we talked about corruption in Ukraine. So now we know that that's part of this entire push by Trump, Giuliani, apparently Bill Barr. Bill Barr's people say that the Justice Department say that never happened. But Pence, for the first time, looks like he could be exposed here. And of course, Trump himself said that, hey, I'll release transcripts of Pence's phone calls and meetings gladly. So Trump seems ready to put him out there as well.
Well, to what extent do you think that, there's been some conversations about Trump wanting to replace Pence on the ticket with, we're not sure who, possibly with the former UN ambassador. But what's their relationship like? And if Trump starts going down, is Pence going to, throw him under the bus? Is he going to step up? I mean, what might we expect given Pence's history?
I think there's a great sort of barometer for this, and I report this out in my book, Access Hollywood Weekend, as we call it, right? October 7th, 2016, the Washington Post reports on these explosive tapes where Donald Trump is bragging about molesting women and, how he uses Tic Tacs to get it done, and it's just explosive stuff. In the hours after that happens, Republican Party donors call up Pence's campaign and say, we're ready to replace Mike Pence or Trump on the ticket with Mike Pence, make him the Republican nominee. Pence's people say no. And here's why. Because, he could have become the nominee, but he would have gone down in flames, more than likely. Also, he would have lost the support of the Trump base of voters. So always keep this in mind. Look down the road. They're thinking about running for the White House in their own right. That's the goal. So if you assume that, then everything becomes about who controls the Trump base of voters. And in order to do that, you have to be unflinchingly loyal to Donald Trump. And I just don't see, Pence. I've heard these stories. We've all heard them before. There's rumors that Pence wants to push him off the cliff, and stick the knife in, et cetera, toss him under the bus. I don't see that as being practical or realistic politically, at least not for what their goals are.
Yeah, very interesting. You talk in your book about Donald Trump wanting Ivanka to be vetted for vice president. What?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that happened. It was shut down fairly quickly, although Trump did go to his team with the request. As I understand it, they gingerly told him that nepotism would probably be a problem in the general election. I mean, on top of everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. This doomsday theology thing. I've spent a lot of time in the course of my life and even worked briefly in Israel.
Interesting.
And one of the things that is the people that, I mean, you walk 10 blocks and you always run across these people. There are all these white Christian evangelicals, hardcore evangelicals, who are constantly doing pilgrimages and stuff over there. And what they will tell you, and they will tell you enthusiastically and aggressively, and many of them have told me on many occasions, that their understanding of the Bible is that in order to bring Jesus back, a couple of things have to happen. The capital of Israel has to be moved to Jerusalem, and the Second Temple has to be rebuilt. I was in Israel just a few weeks after Alan Goodman tried to do this back in, I think it was the 80s, where he just ran into the Temple Mound, threw up a tent, and then started shooting, killed a bunch of people.
Wow.
And he thought the tent would be the Second Temple, and that immediately the sky would open and Jesus would come down, and of course he got taken away. But there's this doomsday theology about, and then of course, a war will erupt in the Middle East. There'll only be 144,000 Israelis who survive, Jewish Israelis. They will all convert to Christianity, and then ta-da, Jesus appears. And it's pretty toxic theology, but a lot of folks in Israel are more than happy to take their money. How does Donald Trump and Mike Pence fit into this?
Yeah, let me point something out, and this is something early in my reporting. I sort of jumped down that rabbit hole because I wanted to understand sort of the foundations of the Christian right. Some of the foundations, not everything, but it is a key portion of it. And I wanted to see where Mike Pence fit into that. So let's talk about his salvation experience for a second here. 1978, he goes to the Ichthus Music Festival in Wilmore, Kentucky. It's right outside Lexington. And it's sort of like it's like Jesus Woodstock, and he has this experience. And at that same time, Paul Waverish and Morton Blackwell take a drive down to Lynchburg, Virginia, around about the same time, to meet with Jerry Falwell and basically create the moral majority. They link up the conservative movement with this evangelical right, sort of Southern Baptist, more Southern Baptist-inspired evangelicalism. So I really wanted to understand, so is Pence a theocrat, right? That question has been floated. We hear that very often. And let me just say that as best I can tell, the answer is no. And there's two reasons why I come to that conclusion. Number one, his friends told me that he does not personally get into a lot of this. The sort of if your viewers want to ask about this, check Google premillennial dispensationalism, and that's sort of the theological.
So are you saying that you think that they moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem not because they were kowtowing to the theocrats in the United States, the evangelicals who want the end of the world to come? By the way, I should note Goodman was actually a Messianic Jew, as I recall. I mean, there's also a sect in Judaism that there's bumper stickers, Mashiach now. But in any case, are you suggesting that they moved the embassy as a sop to Netanyahu to help him out politically, or for basically more secular reasons, as opposed to this was their way of tossing a bone to the evangelicals?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. Number one is, it is kowtowing politically, and you see that when you have when they move the embassy, and the first person you have speak there, or not the first person, but you have the invocation given by Robert Jeffress, who's sort of the updated version of Pat Robertson, right. Jerry Falwell, that type, and he believes in this, and he actually flicks at that prophecy, that belief that there will be the doomsday, the end of the world, as long as they repopulate Jerusalem with Jewish people. He actually talks about that at the opening of the embassy last year. My understanding, though, is that Pence himself does not really buy into this. And I was talking with someone who has helped him out over the years, and We had a very serious conversation. I said, I asked him, I said, does Pence really buy into this, that there will be, what it says in Revelation, there will be bowls of fire poured forth from the heavens, and that, there will be, the tribulation, the rapture of the tribulation, a judgment day, and then, ultimately the return of Jesus. And, aren't there, more immediate concerns about that too? You're creating a serious holy war by taking sides in this, the split in the Middle East. Right. And in this person point, he said, "Look, who doesn't pander?"
Yeah.
That's how they see it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, I thought your reference to Pence, actually the story about how Pence came up with this racist ad with the, against his opponent in the 1990 congressional race where, the Arab would take off his glasses and there'd be another pair of glasses behind. And this was actually Pence's idea, and his people were like, no. And the media, as I recall in your book, it said something like, this was something, the production qualities were like what would come out of the local gun store, but it worked.
That's right. Yeah, Dan Carpenter, a longtime columnist out in Indianapolis, left-leaning columnist for the Indianapolis Star. I'm trying to think how he put it. He said that it looks like an attempt at Saturday Night Live with the quality production of Don's Gun Store.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, Don.
I thought that was an amazing story. I'm moving along here because I'm going to hit a break in a few minutes. Sure. But back years ago, it must have been 6-8 years ago, maybe longer than that, probably longer than that, I debated Mike Pence at the Heritage Foundation. And no, it was at a Talkers event. It was at a talk radio convention but put on by Talkers magazine. And maybe a decade before that, I had written an op-ed or I'd written an article that peripherally mentioned the fairness doctrine. And at that time, when I first wrote that a decade earlier, I had bought Rush Limbaugh's line that the fairness doctrine, that the end of the fairness doctrine is what made him possible, and that the fairness doctrine somehow mandated equality or balance, political balance in media. It's absolutely not what the fairness doctrine says at all. But anyhow, I was debating Mike Pence about the fairness doctrine and saying we need to bring it back. And he pulls out this piece of paper and he reads this statement about the fairness doctrine, making Limbaugh possible and all this kind of stuff, and how getting rid of it was such a good thing. And then at the very end, he says, "You wrote that." And I'm like, yeah, you got me. I did write that. And I was misinformed back then. And I have since informed myself. But he says, but you wrote that. And the whole room, I mean, most of the people in the room were right-wing talk show hosts, and they're all, applauding Pence. And I'm just like, he just slammed me. I mean, this guy does his homework. He's a very canny politician. He's very smart. And I think that we diminish him or take him for granted or pat him on the head at considerable peril.
Yeah, look, and if that's the metric that he uses for things, I mean, does that mean that we read his websites from the 1990s where he's talking about gay conversion therapy, for instance, or, not giving AIDS funding to the Ryan White AIDS
right, or tobacco doesn't cause cancer? That was in 2000, as I recall. He wrote an op-ed
That's interesting.
About that.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. He did that to you. I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah, the video of it probably lives over at talkers.com. I'm sure it's still out there.
Oh, interesting.
But it was it gave me an insight into, because I went into it, relatively unprepared, just thinking, okay, I'm going to be debating another right-wing politician, which I do all the time, and usually, without a great deal of difficulty. And stylistically, at least, and I think, in some ways, even on the details, Pence kicked my butt. And it just really surprised me. I walked away from that thinking, boy, this guy, there's more to this guy than I thought there was. He's not just another right-wing crackpot.